Ethereum is still undefeated in terms of security. In the end, it's all about security. And so that's what we're trying to solve here with distributed validators. It's how do we improve the security of Ethereum? Governance is actually
Mm.
pretty cool if you think about it. One of the most inspiring one is distributed validators being run in Kenya, actually powered by solar energy. I think the staking rewards are helping them
Mm.
live a bit better in that little village there. So that was quite inspiring. Shout out to the team there that's building that.
Nice.
And then the even crazier vision, and that's one that I rarely share, but so Vitalik sometimes says that he wants every phone to become a validator. So in that world
Mm.
where every phone where you turn it on, it becomes a validator.
All right. Hi, everyone. This is the Blockchain Socialist Podcast. And for today's episode, I have Thomas Heremans. He is the CEO of Obol. I previously had Osín Kyne, if you remember him, the CTO of Obol, where we talked about the technology that they've been working on called distributed validators. It's really interesting stuff. It's basically a way to allow people to stake together in a kind of more communal way. You can pool together your Ether, for example, if you want to stake on the Ethereum blockchain to earn yield together. In case you don't have like 32 ETH, because not everyone has that, you can get a bunch of friends and just put in a couple together, scrounge what you got together. But before I butcher what distributed validators are anymore, maybe Thomas, if you want to give a quick introduction to who you are and maybe remind the audience a bit of what Obol is and how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me today. So Thomas, CEO of the Obol Association. Yeah, you talk about distributed validators as a way to pool funds, and this is the blockchain socialist, right? So maybe it's socialist staking as you pulled in as a group. Maybe that's how we call it this time. Well, the term we like to use is actually squat staking. But yeah, so
Mm.
we can go into that in a minute. Overall, like Obol and the Obol collective that we're trying to build is the largest decentralized operator ecosystem. And who needs these sort of operators, decentralized networks, is blockchains like Ethereum, where decentralization and security is really important, where you want a lot of resilience. And I think we just saw it recently with Bybit or with the Tornado Cash sanctions being revoked. Ethereum is still undefeated in terms of security. And too often we talk about decentralization, and I think that doesn't really resonate with a lot of normies out there. In the end, it's all about security. And so that's what we're trying to solve here with distributed validators. It's how do we improve the security of Ethereum? And I'm happy to go a bit more now into distributed validators, if that's okay. Cool.
Right, sure. So, like distributed validators, you can think of maybe as um, useful for many different things. One of those can be for pooling funds together to stake with your community or just to do things kind of like Rocket Pool or one of these types of things. If you don't have, you can put a little bit with them and then they stake for you type of thing. But also, it's important for decentralization and kind of the redundancy, I guess, of the uptime of nodes that would be running Ethereum software or blockchain software
Correct.
broadly. Kind of the,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like to break down the sort of supply chain of staking for people who might not be like super familiar. And I think that's like a nice way to start
Yeah,
when
that'd be
talking
great. Yeah.
about distributed validators. So at the end of the day, Ethereum technology, and you need humans running that technology. So these humans running nodes, we call them operators. They can be individuals like you and me, like Rocket Pool operators. They can also be entities like ConSwiss or Figment and Blockdaemon and professional operators. And what these humans or entities do, they run machines which we call nodes. And there's really two types of nodes. You have your standard full node, Ethereum, that's just relaying transactions. And that's still very important for communicating across the globe on this global settlement layer. And then you can also sort of upgrade your node and make it a validator by staking some ETH. Typically, it's just one entity or one operator bringing all of that. Or you can get that from someone else if you're an operator for Lido, for example, or for EtherFi. And then you transform this node into a validator that does a number of duties, such as validating transactions, proposing blocks, and you get rewards for it. Now, the issue is that this is a machine and machines go down. humans go on holidays. Sometimes they don't have time to repair those machines. They need to upgrade these machines. Some of these machines may be caught on fires. We saw that recently, I think, with the Los Angeles fires. There were like some Ethereum nodes affected there. I think we also
Oh,
had
wow.
like a South African data center that's lost internet for like a few hours, and they were part of the Lido curated set. So machines have all sort of issues. There are bugs. We also saw stuff with Allski, testnet, etc. And that's why Ethereum put such importance on having several clients, the diversity across the nodes, etc., across the cloud providers. Now,
Hmm.
in this entire setup of increasing decentralization, which in the end increases security for Ethereum, there is still always one point of failure, which is the operator running that machine. And that's really what distributed validators solve, is splitting that validator across several machines so that if one of that machine fails, the rest can continue doing the duties, accruing the rewards, and don't get
Hmm.
penalty. So you can think of you, me, and maybe two other people pulling together our machines, as well as the 32 ETH, so that if one of our machines loses internet, we forget to update to the latest fork, we have an issue, you can count on the rest of the three of us to keep having the rewards, keep having the uptime, protecting Ethereum. And that means also just more rewards in the end for us as well as a collective of four people. And so you can do this very locally as a little group, which we call squad staking, or you can have institutions do that as well, which is also the trend that we're seeing at the moment.
Right. So, like, yeah, right now, maybe for people who maybe, aren't as familiar with all these various terms, um, blockchains like Ethereum, unlike Bitcoin, have proof of stake consensus. Proof of stake consensus means that you put up your cryptocurrency as collateral to run a node in the peer-to-peer network of Ethereum. You are basically validating transactions that are happening on the Ethereum blockchain, and you get rewarded for that. Um, right now, the minimum requirement is that you have 32 Ether in order to run one of these machines. And if you run the machines very poorly, then you would lose that 32 Ether. And running that machine poorly could mean like an accident happens. It could mean you're just bad at your job. It could mean a lot of different things. Your house could catch on fire. And so to build up resilience or redundancies, you could have multiple machines running for the same 32 ETH stake. And so having that kind of security through uh, almost like I guess like physical decentralization. You have
Correct.
like more guarantees that the computer that represents your 32 ETH will be online and connected to the blockchain whenever it's their turn to validate transactions. So maybe just to fill in those dots there for some people.
Absolutely. I think it's a way to protect your capital as an individual to make sure it's safeguarded. I like to think about it the same way we used to have, or probably still have, laptops that have this sticker that says Intel inside, right? And when you buy this laptop, you know it's good quality, right? And so it's a bit the same when you're choosing a provider that has distributed validator for your stake. You know you have higher security on your capital. So I think that's definitely one part for you as protecting
Mm.
your own capital, but it's just important for Ethereum itself as well. We're seeing attacks go on all the time. For the positive side, the Tornado Cash sanctions got removed, but it's really important to keep decentralizing for the sake of Ethereum itself, not just for the protection of capital of the stakers, because the more nodes, the more diversity, the more geos, the more clients, the more entities running those nodes, and all that is facilitated through distributed validators, the more Ethereum is resilient through these external attacks.
Yeah, I would like to talk about liquid staking. So, liquid staking would be like kind of what I guess distributed validators facilitates is like one of the things. Or would you kind of maybe explain what liquid staking is and how Obol kind of relates to it?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So we mainly see three sort of verticals in terms of the relevant markets for distributed validators. And liquid staking is definitely one of the big ones. So the challenge for these protocols, and we're talking here about, for example, Lido, um, is they're taking the ether from people like you and me, from retail, from institutions, and then they have a number of trusted operators, humans or entities that are running that stake on their behalf. Those protocols are sort of this marketplace between operators and capital providers or staker. And the challenge for these protocols, at least a couple of years ago, and there was a very large debate around Lido at the time, is that it was a centralizing force for the network. As we were discussing earlier, centralization force means risk and it's an attack vector on the credible neutrality of Ethereum. So protocols, especially Lido in the early days, were looking at how can we safely increase the number of operators that we distribute the stake towards without compromising the risk. Obviously, giving a lot of stake to someone, there is a lot of risk. They can run away with the amounts of money that's being trusted in them. Then distributed validators sort of came around that time and solved that problem for the protocols, where instead of giving big chunks up to individual operators, they could say, we'll put the four of you together. We'll actually give you more per person than we would have otherwise. But now suddenly no single party can go away with the money because 3 out of 4 is enough, or 5 out of 7, depending on how you configure the cluster. And you don't have to trust a single party anymore. And so what these protocols did is they brought a lot of new operators, even like more solo and home stakers with various modules they're introducing now that they don't really trust yet, but they also know they don't have to trust them because the technology won't allow these people to get away with the funds. And so I think Lido increased by tenfold the number of operators from 30 to 300. EtherFi has their program called EtherFi Solo Operator, something like that as well. And recently, Swell is also decentralizing their operator set with Obol distributed validators. So we saw a lot of like these protocols, again, for their peace of mind, for being that Intel Inside security to their staker, adopt distributed validators. So that was the first big segment. The second one is everything more around the institution. I think that's still very early. We're expecting staking ETF this year. Well, that's what people are saying. I don't have any insider info. But I think if I was the SEC, if I was BlackRock, if I was these issuers, you don't want to trust, again, one entity to be running all of that stake. That's very risky from a regulatory perspective. And when we think about risk, I think TradFi is way worse in terms of risk aversion than crypto natives, let's say. So for them, it just makes sense to trust a cluster of entities running the stake, and so that no single one of them can get away with the funds. So that's the second big segment, I say. And then the third one are just like home stakers like you and me. And for people like that, it's more like a peace of mind. You only get to propose a block like once a year typically. And that's probably 30% of your rewards for the year. So you don't want to miss that block. And we've seen too many cases of people like just on holidays, or if you're at a conference, you forgot to upgrade something on your machine. And so by teaming up with others, you can reduce the risk and increase the reliance. And so that's definitely something we also want to give back to Ethereum, is just keep allowing home stakers and solo stakers to get access to better software.
Right. So there's I guess there's like, if you have, just for the audience, let's say you do have 32 ETH, you could either choose to stake for yourself, in which you will have to keep up with your machine. You have to make sure that it does all of its upgrades on time. You have to do a little bit of work while it's running in order to make sure that you're earning rewards for doing it. Or the other choice is put it into a liquid staking protocol like Lido, where you can basically give them your ETH and they give you like a derivative of staked ETH, and then you will be earning rewards through that, or a fee. Lido, I think, has just been like very dominant player in this market. I think taking up like maybe more than 50%, I think at one point, if not they still are, of the kind of like liquid staking market. Which means that we're kind of like trusting one entity. And so I think one of the things that they are doing to try to make up for that is to decentralize the way that they run validators. And Obol is kind of like one of the ways that you can do that, or because like Obol works at the layer to where anybody can kind of create the distributed validator set, or a cluster of validators to run something similar to Lido. So if I'm not mistaken, with something like Obol, you can make your own liquid staking token by combining a couple of things together, and if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's like creating a liquid staking derivative that would require like issuing tokens and stuff, and that's definitely another market than us. But we're at that infrastructure, and whether you rely on
Yeah.
someone else like a Lido to help you with that, or you want to do it directly because you have the capital up front and the machine and the skills, these are definitely two
Yeah.
avenues you can pursue.
Right. But so the reason you're on today is because Obol released, or you guys are starting a new program, the Obol Incentives Program. You want to talk a little bit about what that is, what people can expect, and yeah, how do you get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So quite excited about this. So we understand that it's not easy to move your stake around, and sometimes people need a little bit of a push. I think the difference in our technology rather than your typical, let's say, DeFi pool is you just move capital from one pool to the other where there is the highest APR, right? As a good farmer that you are. In our case, there are actually machines that are involved on the back ends. And if we go back to these operators, the humans and the nodes, like there is actual infrastructure deployed somewhere by someone. And so that makes that transition and that moving of one technology, let's say non-distributed validators to distributed validators with a bit more friction. And so to help people go through that, we were introducing then the Obol Incentive Program, which is giving out rewards, 2.5% of the Obol supply per year in equal tranches each week to people who have deployed on distributed validators. And so that can be, again, squad stakers like you and me, if we're operating everything from scratch, or it can be people staking with Lido through their Menovolt, or it can be with EtherFi, or with Swell, or Chorus One. If you go to obol.org/incentives, you can see all of the partners that have distributed validators under the hood, which you maybe already are staking with, and then you become automatically eligible for the Obol incentives, as these partners will get the rewards and then redistribute to their community.
So usually in these types of situations, of course, people want to know, how is this program different than an airdrop? Is there also an airdrop? What's the connection to it? And then also, I think for me, what is more interesting is also what can you do with the Obol token?
Cool. Yeah, so this is a totally different program than the airdrop. We actually already executed our airdrop around 2 months ago, I think late January, where there were mainly three groups that were recipients of that airdrop. The first group were solo stakers for the same reason. We love these people. We want you to keep doing what you're doing to decentralize Ethereum. The second big group was capital providers. They were accruing points. And this is what has sort of evolved into the programmatic incentives or Obol Incentives Program we're discussing today. And then the third big groups are the operators running these machines. We understand there are important humans that are credentialed and that have shown good capability in terms of running those nodes. And so we also dropped that group. And so if we look at these distribution methods for getting Obol tokens is as many hands as we can. The airdrop was one piece. Now we're doing the Obol incentives. And actually governance was enabled a couple of weeks ago, and they voted to actually unlock the Obol token soon. So currently all of the airdrop and the Obol incentives were locked. And now as the association, we're working with listing partners to unlock the token. And so once that's live, people will be able to do a few things with regard to your utility question. So the first one is governance. That's like no different than your typical governance. You have proposals, people vote in proportion to their number of tokens. Now, I've always been inspired by the governance vision of optimism, and that's why we tried to replicate a bit of their two-house system, where they have both the token house and the citizens house for people who are familiar with the optimism ecosystem. And the citizen house is used for retroactive funding. And so this is the second thing that you can do with your Obol token is vote on retroactive funding. And we actually just ran a round where we distributed 1 million Obol tokens to projects who contributed to the collective, whether they're building software, whether they're making it easy to stake on Obol DVs, whether they're making educational resources. So that's the second thing you can do with token is allocate where does that money go for retroactive funding. The third thing you can do with your token is actually stake them. This was also recently passed by governance recently. And this is also something I'm super excited. It's powered by Tally and the Tally protocol that they recently released. I don't know if you've seen that. And one of the challenges they're trying to tackle is typically you either keep your token in your wallet to be able to vote on governance, because there is important stuff to vote on, like capital allocation and treasury and grants, etc. Or you move your token into some sort of farm or liquidity mining program, and then you lose all of that voting power. And so when you stake your Obol tokens, you're able to sort of break this dilemma as you get staked Obol in return that not only accrues revenue, but that you can also use in DeFi without losing the delegation of your voting power. And so that ensures we have strong governance and it's protected and we have good engagement from our delegates. And that for you, who don't care about voting, etc., you can just keep using your token in DeFi. And so I find that a very nice paradigm of reconciling using DeFi and governance power. So that's the third thing that you can do with your Obol token, stake them to protect governance, make a bit of rewards for that. And then obviously I touched a bit upon that now. We're looking at various DeFi integrations such as lending and liquidity pools.
Hey there, listeners. Before we jump back into today's episode, I want to take a moment to talk about how you can support the blockchain socialists and help us continue our mission of providing a voice for alternative and radical viewpoints on crypto. As a creator, there are typically three main ways to generate revenue: advertising, affiliate sponsors, and audience funding. For us, the first two options don't align with our values or the radical nature of our content. That's why we rely on audience funding to pay for the costs associated with producing the show. By becoming a patron on Patreon, you're not just providing financial support, you're actively participating in the growth of a community dedicated to creating high-quality content on the crypto and blockchain space from a political point of view. Your contributions to Patreon enable us to create more in-depth content, bring on amazing guests, and explore issues that matter to you without the constraints of traditional sponsorship. When you join us on Patreon, you'll receive access to exclusive content, blockchain socialist swag, and a copy of my critically acclaimed book, Blockchain Radicals, in digital format. More importantly, you'll play a vital role in sustaining our community of like-minded people who share your passion for meaningful change in the blockchain space. If you're looking for a more decentralized option, consider joining TBS DAO, which is a crypto alternative to Patreon by paying in bread, a post-capitalist cryptocurrency, which you can find more information on my website. However you support, your contributions make a real impact. Together, we can amplify the voices pushing the boundaries of what's possible and help spread the message that blockchain does not need to be used to further entrench capitalist exploitation if we put our efforts into it. So if that message resonates with you, I hope you'll consider helping out. Nice. And this is, would this be on mainnet Ethereum?
Since our technology is mainly powering mainnet Ethereum, it makes sense to have our token there. We'll likely explore an L2 when it comes down to that. But for now, we're focused on the listing, the main tier one exchanges, as was voted by governance recently as the next priority for the collective.
Right. I was interested because I know that you guys are also on Gnosis chain, for example. So that's the chain that we build on at Breadchain Cooperative. I think it's, still an interesting phenomenon you have here in the crypto space where you can give voting rights to those who are contributing to your ecosystem and project in a way that's also confers some sort of governance rights that, in the world of Facebook or whatever else, other insert big tech company here, was never like an option. It was never like even, something that was considered. Those who built a bunch of things that ended up being useful to Facebook, they simply just took it.
Correct. And I think governance in crypto got a bit of a bad rap due to the probably last administration in the US. People were afraid of doing anything else but governance. So the meme of useless governance token emerged. But governance is actually pretty cool if you think about it. But I agree, you need other stuff to do with your tokens. And it's great if these things don't compete with governance. But actually ownership and governance is something very unique to crypto that I think should be celebrated. And it's a bit sad that it turned into a meme because that's all that was available for a
Yeah.
while.
I mean, I think it has a lot to do with maybe also, I mean, there's definitely like regulatory pressures, I think is a big part of that, but there's also, we have never been able to do this before. Like, so it plays into this, I think, a
Mm,
little bit. You know, we don't really know how to exist in a decentralized, governed network. You know, I think that's um, it's a muscle you have to exercise and learn. And, you know, it was inevitable there were going to be a ton of failures, I
correct.
think.
We tend to spin run the history of everything, right? So we'll probably
Yeah,
end up
yeah.
to some sort of similar to traditional governance systems. Hopefully
Right.
one that's improved and more transparent and more fair. But I think there is a reason also to
Hmm.
why humans organize in the way they do. And then back to your comments
Yeah.
on noses, that's absolutely fair. So we focused a lot on Ethereum for now, but obviously we can bring this technology to many other chains. And we have done it with noses, and we have done it as well with monads, which is a lot of the hype at the
Mhm.
moment. Now, Ethereum is the most credibly neutral out there, so it made sense to start there. But if we see like genuine traction
Yep.
somewhere else, we can bring the technology there. It's not like a groundbreaking technology per se, like it exists in TradFi. It's just like high reliability software. And so every chain probably, if they get enough traction and are serious about decentralization, should benefit from distributed validators.
Nice. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm curious here. I actually don't even know that much about Monad to be honest. It's one of those things that I've seen, like it seems like it's trending, but I haven't had the time to look into it. But yeah, I guess it is it also a layer one?
It is a layer one, and it's a bit,
Okay.
I like to compare it to the eigenlayer intersubjective token thing they released when they did the airdrop. And now
Uh,
Monad has this proof of liquidity. It's sort of these concepts everyone's talking about, no one understands. So we'll see where it goes.
right.
I think they're trying stuff, and I think that's what crypto is great at. Trying stuff, improving capital efficiency, trying to align through crypto economics various stakeholders. And that's yeah, generally positive, I'd say, to experiment with these things.
Right. Yeah, things that one day I will get around to finally understanding. You know, for people who are listening and they feel like they don't understand some things, that's also the case for everyone else.
Correct,
It's
correct,
impossible to understand every little thing that's going on. There's
correct.
a little
Everyone's
bit too
just
much.
pretending.
So was curious to hear more about any kind of more community-led efforts that you've seen within Obol. I guess like creative ways to inspire maybe the audience a bit of how people have used squad staking or, you know, using distributed validators for some interesting purpose. So yeah, I'm curious if you can kind of regale us with some stories about that.
Sure. Um, the best place to maybe start this is to look into the recipient of our attractive fund. We put this like 1
Hmm.
million token, and people could apply by sharing their stories of how they've leveraged both distributed validators for their communities or different ways. We were quite amazed by the different stories we got in there. Communities obviously really like squad staking as they already trust each other, but sometimes they don't always have the skills to take on like a 50K worth validator, 32 ETH. By teaming up, creating a squad, they can sort of share the risk. One of the most inspiring one is a distributed validators being run in Kenya, actually powered by solar energy. I think the staking rewards are helping them
Mm,
live a bit better in that little village there. So that was quite inspiring. Shout out to the team there that's building that.
nice.
Overall, communities also are looking at ways to deploy distributed validators in a very easy way. Recipient of the attractive round were things like DApp nodes that make running a node very easy, or Ethereum on
Yeah.
ARM, which is also a group aiming at using very low power devices. Again, that's threatening the um, Ethereum network through making it available to even like low power devices. And then a bunch
Mm,
of communities such as Mexico, or I think we had a bunch in Asia as well that are just creating these like grassroots communities and using distributed validators as they don't really want to trust these big groups and protocols with their ETH. And then they can just use all of the rewards to maybe do some marketing and organize events. And so that was really heartwarming to see.
Nice. So yeah, a lot of different groups are trying different ways to use distributed validators to fund basically the initiatives that they care about. And using the interest of the collective capital that they have to help fund that is a nice way to do it, especially if you're a group that broadly is interested in crypto, blockchains, Ethereum space, for example.
Correct.
So you mentioned that there were a couple of proposals that were passed. Do you guys refer to yourself as a DAO? Is
A
that term
collective,
a
but
collective? Okay, I like that. I
it's
like that. I
probably
like that.
fairly similar. But I think the collective really puts front and center the co-creation principle, which
Hmm.
we've just actually embarked recently. So we launched governance for the collective through token voting about a month ago, and there were a couple proposals that were submitted by members of the collective. The first one, which I discussed earlier, was the will to unlock the token. So we'll proceed with that. And the second one was enabling staking, which I also touched upon earlier. And what we saw was like an incredible amount of engagement from our delegates. And I was trying to understand how come is it? Like the number of participation, I think we had about 120 on each proposal. Well, that's higher than Compound on their typical governance proposal.
Mm.
And I think we made the conscious choice of not going for top of the leaderboard delegates that are very well known, and instead actually heavily promoting the people that are using our product, like the Mexico group, for example, that I was referring to earlier. And so these are people that are investing in our technology, that understand it. They might not know everything about governance, about all the different protocols, but they know a lot about Obol and how it's helping their own communities. And that means they have a vested interest beside just governance to also have the
Hmm.
success of the token and the collective in the long term. So that was quite positive to see the amount of involvement there. And then we also saw a lot
Hmm.
of debates as they actually are so motivated that they wanted to do more. So we were pressed to actually post a framework for the goals of the collective. And we did that yesterday on the 24th of March, about sharing what we think the goals of the collective should be. And in the same way than any of the other proposal, this is a collective effort. So people will comment on this proposal, they can come up with their own goals, and then that will set the direction for the collective. So it's really a co-creation mechanism. It's actually inspired by the Goose goals, which we reframed as the squad goals so that it stays on brand. So super excited to
Right.
see what comments the community comes with as they're super passionate. And yeah, shout out to all the delegates of the collective.
Nice. And then I was wondering because you also sometimes refer to Obol as the association.
Yeah,
Is that different than the collective, or do you guys use like a Swiss association
correct,
or something
correct.
like that?
So the Swiss
Yeah.
Association is just the legal entity that allow us to, for example, make contracts with tier one exchanges for the listing. It's sort of the legal wrapper, and until a lot of the world catches up on how to regulate crypto, Switzerland was a good place to start. So that's where we established the association, but it's not meant to be an entity that stays there forever. My goal is actually that I don't have a job in a couple of years and that it's all decentralized within the collective. So let's see how that goes. But I also know that decentralization is a process. We've seen other
Yeah.
projects try to decentralize too fast. That often doesn't go well either. So it's sort of navigating this road slowly.
Yeah. So you heard it here first. The goal is to fire Thomas from Obol.
You have 2 years, but not sooner.
Cool. So I've also, you guys have progressed quite a bit in the past year since I spoke to Osín. A lot of progress, and it's been really awesome to see. I was wondering if you can give us maybe a taste of what else is there to come, maybe in the next couple of years. Where do you see, what types of things do you think Obol will be bringing to the space?
Cool. Yeah, no, definitely. It's been quite a wide ride. So 2023 was the first distributed validator on mainnet. I like to call TVS for total value stake rather than total value locked. Then 2024, we had our first billion TVS, and 2025, we're aiming for 10 to 20 billion. So another order of magnitude there. Now, talking about billion TVL or TVS can seem a lot. Now, for infrastructure and for Ethereum, it's actually not even that big. Ethereum staking is the biggest market out there, so it's still the largest protocols out there. So that's why you can achieve things like 10 billion, which a lot of DeFi protocols would not even dream about. But that's the short-term goal in terms of just pushing distributed validators. But now, if you look at the technology we have on one side these operators and these humans that we know are really good at running stuff, and then we have networks like Ethereum or Monad or Gnosis Safe that actually need operators to run decentralized application. We are also seeing things like decentralized compute with Akash, or with all the stuff around AI that's trying to source a lot of the inference from various machines. So I think Obol can evolve into more of a marketplace where on one side you have these operators that know how to run software very well and with credentialed and maybe given like tools to easily spin up like from a marketplace. Oh, now I want to add on my machine maybe decentralized compute or a local AI agent. And on the other side, you have networks that need decentralized operators to be resilient, and because they understand the value of blockchain and capture resistance, and they can directly tap into our network of operators. So I think that's probably the bigger vision, where we become this more marketplace for apps on one side that want to decentralize, and operators that we've vetted and we know are really good at running decentralized apps and make money from it, obviously.
Interesting. Are you guys, now I'm curious, are you guys looking into like Eigenlayer as another place for this? When you described this marketplace, I was kind of thinking of like Eigenlayer services.
Correct. So AVS are like an
Nice.
obvious type of app that need
Mm,
operators to run their
yeah,
services.
that's awesome to hear.
And then the even crazier vision, and that's one that I rarely share, but um, so Vitalik sometimes says that he wants every phone to become a validator. So in that world
Mm,
where every phone where you turn it on, it becomes a validator, you could imagine that as soon as you turn it on, it actually auto joins a cluster. These like mega distributed validator cluster of maybe, I don't know, 50 to 100 nodes. And as soon as you turn off your phone, it stops validating. And you just do like this little part of the cluster, and people join on and off. These validators never go offline. And maybe this like extra source of income can pay for your phone plan, or can pay for, I don't know, your Twitter pro accounts, something like that. And so
mm.
if we can make distributed validators like super easy to join on and off, I think we can even live in a world where everyone is running like a super light distributed validator Ethereum node. And that means
Right.
you can also then push your transactions with total privacy directly from your phone, etc. So kind of a crazy vision, but let's see where we go.
Yeah. You think that is that one a within 2 years, you think?
Yeah, it
Probably
depends what
longer.
like clients do. I think we'll see.
Yeah.
I haven't seen much on this recently on the roadmap. I think they're more focused on the Beam chain and making Ethereum
Right.
like
Yeah.
quantum resistant. I think that those are also things we're definitely looking at supporting.
Right. Nice. Um, well, yeah, thanks so much for sharing about Obol and giving us this update. It's been great to see you guys progress like super successfully, is what it looks like to me. Would you want to just share with people where they can keep up with Obol and how they can start their own distributed validator, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So two places, the website obol.org. If you're interested in the Obol incentives and boosting your APR on staking, then that's obol.org/incentives. And then I think our Twitter or X feed, Obol_collective, is yeah, the best place to stay up to date with all the announcements.
Cool. Well, awesome. Thanks so much, Thomas. Yeah, wish you guys the best of luck. And yeah, I will definitely check out creating another Obol cluster. I had one before and then we ended it. We need to start again. I would love to do one in the Discord server. Would love to get some people there to help me start a cluster. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Come join in the Discord server. We'll start a distributed validator. I can do Ethereum. I can do Gnosis. I'm open.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for coming on. And yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Was a pleasure. Thanks, Josh.